Father, bless our land, guide us with thy mighty hands, keep us free from evil powers, be our guide through countless hours to our...
This is Paulette on FiveEyes.tv. Today I will be speaking with Julian Robinson, who is currently Deputy General Secretary of the People's National Party since 2003. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you.
Right, Julian, today I want to talk about you as an individual and your achievements. So I'm going to ask you to tell me about your childhood.
Sure. Well, I was actually born in London.
London?
Yeah. My father was studying law at the time. At that point in time, all Jamaicans had to go to the UK to complete a law degree because there wasn't a faculty of law in the Caribbean. So he was studying law at the time. I am the last of three children. I have an elder brother who is about 3 years older than me and a sister who's about a year and a half. So I was born in London. I have no memories of living in London because I came back home when I was probably a couple months old. And I've spent my entire life, apart from the times when I went away to study and work, I've spent my entire life here in Jamaica.
So are you British or Jamaican?
Both actually, because I'm British by birth and I have a British passport, and I'm Jamaican by parentage, and so I have dual nationality. Okay. But in terms of if you ask me as a person who and what I am, I'm clearly Jamaican because I've spent, pretty much my entire life here, and I've been shaped by Jamaica.
Okay. You were the first recipient of the Isaac Henry Memorial Scholarship. How did that make you feel, and how did that come about?
The Isaac Henry Memorial Scholarship, it's a scholarship given to, at the time, to the person who best exemplifies the ideal student athlete. I participated in a number of sports when I was in high school. I played very actively football and cricket. More cricket than football, at all levels throughout high school, and I played on a number of winning teams in schoolboy competitions. I also did reasonably well in my academic studies, and based on my performances both on the field and off the field, I was awarded that scholarship. So I was pretty pleased at the time with that award.
Excellent. So you're an all-rounder.
In every respect, I would say that. But in the cricketing terms, I batted, I bowled, I did everything. In football, I played a number of positions, and I've always believed in trying to live a balanced life, whether it be in pursuing my academics. I've always been involved in extracurricular activities. In almost everything, I'm a firm proponent of having a balanced life. So in that regard, I think all-rounder is an apt description.
It sounds like it. Well, if you're that good, why didn't you become a professional cricketer?
Well, I actually wanted to do that, and that was actually my ambition. But, I was reasonably good, but to become a professional, I don't think I was good enough. And at the time, it required 100% devotion to cricket. And I was at university at the time. And the only way you can make the adjustment from being what I would call semi-professional to being professional, it really requires full-time devotion. And I don't think, one, I was good enough to be a professional, and two, I don't think my parents would have welcomed me leaving university to pursue that. So, I played cricket when I went to the UK. I played league cricket. I played for Manchester University when I was there. So I continued playing cricket. I played football, not professionally or competitively, but just for fun. So I maintained my activism while I was in London.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions later on, but I might as well ask you now. Questions was going to be about football, so I might as well ask you this now. Yeah. So when you were in England, which team did you support?
Well, when I lived in Manchester, I lived literally a stone throw away from the Manchester City ground. However, I was never passionately a City fan. When I grew up here in Jamaica, I followed Tottenham Hotspur.
Tottenham?
I know. That was my favorite team growing up. But while I love football and I watched it, there wasn't a single team that I passionately supported. But I love the game, I appreciate the game, and I just like good football.
Okay, so anytime it's on here,
So
without a
I
doubt.
I watch it now, but I don't follow a particular team. But it's extremely popular here, and you have persons who will die in the same way that they probably would in the UK, who will die for their favorite football team. But I watched a lot of football and also cricket, and being a Jamaican, I'm a supporter of the West Indies team. We've been through some challenging times, but I'm hoping that in the not too distant future we can feel a strong team that will be competitive internationally again. But cricket, of the two sports, cricket is my strongest sport and the one that I probably have the greater attachment to.
You studied at the University of West Indies, Mona campus. Where else did you study?
Well, I went to, after I left high school, I went to UWI Mona campus, which is just here in St. Andrew. I spent 3 years there. I did a bachelor's in management and economics. Had a fantastic time there. Was very involved academically in sport, in student government, and really had a very positive 3 years at the university. After I left there, I went to work with a local bank called Horizon Merchant Bank, which was a startup merchant bank at the time. They had started probably the year before that. And it was my first job out of university.
Oh.
And I was exposed to all aspects of banking. When I went there were only 6 persons working at the bank, so I ended up having to do a little bit of everything. So I had pretty good exposure there. Spent a year there, and then decided that I wanted to go away and pursue an MBA, a Master's in Business Administration. So I went to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. Urbana-Champaign is a campus town which is about an hour south of Chicago, flying. And it was the first time I was going to the Midwest in the US. I traveled to New York, Miami, to the East Coast. So it was a bit of a cultural awakening being in the Midwest, because it's totally different from being on the East Coast, and you know, it's in all respects it was a campus town.
Right.
So I spent a year there, and there was an exchange program with the University of Illinois and Manchester Business School, and I decided to go on the exchange program in my final year and spend 2 semesters at Manchester Business School, which is how I ended up in the UK. So I spent the last year, 2 semesters there, completed my degree, and then decided to stay in the UK to get some work experience. And I was fortunate to be employed by IBM in their management consulting group, and I started working there in 1996.
Right. Also, it seems you had quite a few roles. Can you tell me about some of those roles?
When I joined IBM, I joined in their financial services sector group within management consulting. And principally, we advised and consulted to large European financial institutions, pretty much about how they could use technology to make the banks more effective and more efficient. And quite a bit of that work was actually outside of the UK. So I ended up, quite fortunately, having to travel to a number of European countries. So I got exposure to almost all the other European countries. And I think the one that I enjoyed the most, I spent about 6 months in Turkey.
Really?
Yeah, and had a pretty good time there on a project that we were working on. So I was, as I said, fortunate to have the opportunity to travel, and I really enjoyed seeing other countries. But living out of a suitcase is really not a fun type of lifestyle.
So, can you tell me, what was it in particular about Turkey that you really enjoyed?
Well, you know, it has a very rich culture. There's a fusion of, Turkey has a European and an Asian side, and you have the fusion of those two cultures. And I really found it extremely interesting. It's secular in one sense and very Western in another sense.
Okay.
And it also has a very rich history. And they have these wonderful monuments which age back hundreds of years, which have been preserved and are still in place. So, you know, it was a nice place to be at, to visit, and to spend some time there.
Okay. Now, When you were at school, did you know you wanted to work in the financial institution?
Not really. I had no idea what I wanted to do.
No?
No. I mean, when I left university, I just needed to find a job. I got this job because the Elon Beckford, who owned that bank, was a friend of one of my aunts, and so I was employed there. After I did my MBA, again, I needed to get a job, and I was always attracted to management consulting because I don't do well in static 9-to-5 type environments. I always need something new to stimulate and challenge me. And management consulting does that because you work on a project for 3 to 6 months, and then when it's done, you work on something else. And it's like almost starting a new job over. So from that respect,
it's challenging, and it's
always
different,
interested and different. If I was doing the same thing over and over every day, I would.
I was going to say, you sound like someone that get bored very easily. Yes, I can tell that just speaking to you.
I mean, I have to find things to stimulate my mind continuously.
But you sounded like you were a model student.
No, I wouldn't.
You weren't?
Well, I was not I wouldn't say I was a troublesome student. No, I wouldn't say that at all. I mean, I did my work and I did reasonably well. I wasn't a straight A student, but,
You worked hard.
I worked hard and I got good grades. And as I said, I lived a fairly balanced type of existence. So while I wasn't getting straight A's, I was very active, whether it's in sport or other type of activities. And I did that reasonably well.
But you seem like you were a model child as well.
I don't know. My brother and I used to fight a lot. That was the one thing
but
we got in trouble.
That's normal in relationships.
That's the one thing we got in trouble for fighting. But in fairness, I don't know. I don't think I gave my parents a hard time. I don't think any of us really did. I mean, there were rules and regulations, and pretty much we fought and we between ourselves, but I can't say that our parents would complain that we gave them a hard time.
But I think with the amount of things that you were doing, you didn't have time to get into trouble.
That is also true.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, every summer I was always involved in something.
This is it.
Football camp or cricket camp. So, unlike many of my peers at the time, I wasn't going out to parties or sitting at my home twiddling my thumb wondering what to do. I always had stuff to do. And in essence, that's how my life is now. It's, if it's not politics, there's always something that I'm involved in.
I was going to say, because you've served on many different boards,
Sure.
Jamaican Urban Transit, Institute of Sports,
Sure.
you're a member of the National Advisory Committee on Local Government Reform, Board of Heart Trust, stroke NTA, Chairman of the Finance and ICT Committees, Boards of Factories, Corporation of Jamaica, Kingston and Montego Bay Free Zone Company. What a huge list.
Well, all of them weren't at the same time.
I hope not.
In sport, I served in 1993. After I left university, immediately I was appointed to that board. And the Institute of Sports is a government agency which has responsibility primarily for developing sports programs at the primary level, primary schools. So I spent a year there. That was before I went away. And then when I came back home in 2001, I was employed at JAMPRO, which is the government's investment promotion agency. And I had responsibility for attracting and positioning Jamaica as a location for investment in the information technology sector. So we did a lot in positioning Jamaica to attract investment in like call centers, in business process outsourcing, in those areas, and bringing companies here, companies who primarily were outsourcing to U.S. corporations. And because of our proximity, both physical and cultural proximity, we are an attractive location for that type of activity. So I spent 3.5 years doing that. While I was there, I was appointed to the JUTC board. The JUTC is the government's, runs the government's public transportation system. Very challenging, still remains challenging, like all public sector transport systems, not making any money, heavily subsidized, and the government struggling to find the resources to keep it afloat. So I spent just over a year on that board, and then I spent at the Free Zone about 5 or 6 years there, also at Factories Corporation of Jamaica and the Heart Trust. And in many respects, they were related to my responsibilities at JAMPRO, because the free zone and the factories, they provide the physical space for the investors who come to the country, right? So they built out, they have thousands, hundreds of thousands of square feet of office space for these investors.
Oh, right.
The Heart Trust is the government's national training agency. So they provide the individuals who will work in these places. So in a sense, because of my, initially because of my job at JAMPRO, there were synergies.
They worked hand in hand.
Yeah, they worked hand in hand.
Okay.
So I spent probably about 6 or 7 years on Heart Trust, the Free Zone, and the Factories Corporation boards. And I remained on them until, even after I left JAMPRO, I still played a role. And I had some responsibilities in chairing a number of the committees for those organizations.
Okay.
Eternal Father, bless our land. Guide us with thy mighty hands. Keep us free from evil.
How did you become involved in politics?
Did I become? I would say probably my baptism was at the University of the West Indies. I was elected vice president of the Guild of Undergraduates, which is the student government for the university. And I think that was my introduction into politics. I enjoyed it. I did that from 92 to 93. I was awarded the university's Premier Award for Leadership in 93 at the end of my term on the Guild. And then I got drawn more and more into the PNP. I have an aunt who was a member of Parliament. I also have, my grandfather also served as at the time they were called members of the House of Representatives.
Right.
So I have a family background of involvement in politics. So both my own interests and I suppose having the family background, I got more and more involved. When I was in London, I served with the PNP UK, eventually becoming the chairman of the PNP UK. And then when I got back home, I got more involved, was elected to serve on the party's executive, the National Executive Council. And then in 2003, I was elected one of the Deputy General Secretaries of the party. And I've been in that position since then.
There the story begins.
Yeah, right. That's where that story begins. Yeah, exactly.
Right, Julian, boy, you've done a full range of things. So what I want to ask you now, what message would you give to any youngsters?
You know, I'm a firm believer in being balanced, in focusing on your academics and pursuing those, but also because at the end of the day, you know, you want to be a rounded person, someone who can contribute to a society.
Yeah.
So I'm very firmly of the view of not just being a bookworm, but being someone who participates in team activities, etc., so you can relate socially and otherwise. And just for youngsters to remain positive. I mean, certainly in Jamaica we have a whole host of challenges.
Yeah.
You know, economically with crime, with a number of things, and it's very easy to be distracted by those things and to veer off that course. And you know, in spite of the challenges, we have many success stories.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the youngsters need to look to the examples, not just in sport, not just the Usain Bolts who have done brilliantly, but there are many others, the unsung heroes who every day continue to do us proud, and to use them as examples and as role models, and to strive to be the best in whatever you choose to be. You know, whether you want to be a lawyer, doctor, Indian chief, or you want to be a maid or a street sweeper, whatever it is, your excellence should be your goal. And that really is what I would want to say to you.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I just believe that you hear about so much negativity, but there are a lot of positive role models out there.
Absolutely. But positive stories don't sell newspapers.
That's true.
Or
that's very true.
They don't make news.
Julian, how do you relax?
I run So I run 4 days a week. I run with a group called the Jandamas, and it's both trying to keep fit, and when we run we chat and we socialize. And you know, I go for the occasional drink in the bar, you know, probably 1 or 2 evenings a week, and then on a Friday night. So that's pretty much my relaxation.
Yeah, because I see that you've completed a few half marathons.
I have, yeah, I've run. The last one I did was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm an active member of the Jandamas Club. It's actually a club that was formed to promote long distance running in Jamaica. So I've been a member for about 8 years now. And those are the people who I run with. Like tomorrow morning we're going to be doing hill work on Russell Heights, which is about, we go up and down a mile each way. So we do about 6 miles each morning. But it's just a fun group of people. We chat, we talk about politics, we talk about all kinds of things. And that's my way of trying to maintain my sanity.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Julian. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you.
Eternal Father, bless our land. Guide us with thy mighty hands. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our guide through countless hours. To our leaders, great defenders, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be all forever. Jamaica land we love. Jamaica, Jamaica.